Okay. Welcome, everyone. Happy June the 24th. I want to remind all of you that nothing is impossible with God. That was my devotion this morning. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that. And my devotional made this really interesting distinction between we can know nothing is impossible with God, but actually putting that into practice and executing it looks way different. And it's so perfect that is my devotional today, given this Facebook Live and Instagram Live that Dr. Robin and I are doing. So, Dr. Robin, welcome to the studio. I'm so glad that you joined me today.
Thank you. Thanks for the honor of getting back on here. Man, I feel like old times.
Yeah, as soon as we went live today, both Robin and I are like, wow, we used to ride this horse. Like Robin and I have done so many Facebook Lives over the past 8 years. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be back and writing again. So as we jump in today, obviously the title of our live is God Rewrote Her Retirement, and she said yes. So Robin, let's jump right in. And here's my first question. What was the moment when you realized your original retirement plan wasn't going to happen? And how did you process that emotionally?
I would say that the moment that I knew that my plan was not his plan was, so we moved to Amarillo, basically January 1st. I don't even remember what year that was now, 2.5 years ago. And in April, my husband Marshall went in for another surgery on his foot. The first time we'd been in the hospital here in Amarillo, and they were giving us really a different story than what we'd been hearing before we moved. So I had all these other plans, of life that was going to go the way that we thought it was going to go, and then we get here, and the narrative on that changed pretty quickly. So within 4 months of moving here, and then we kind of started hearing the doctors here, I knew he was in the hospital. I was sleeping on that crappy couch in the hospital next to him, and I woke up one morning and I just knew. I said, and I didn't even tell him. I knew that I had to go back to work doing what I know how to do, and can make it happen quickly. So, I started, the first thing I did was just get on Indeed, of all things, looking for, is there any associateships that are available in town? Can I just plug myself in as an employee and just go to work and get a check? And, I talked to a couple, and I was like, I can't do that. I can't work for somebody. I've done my own thing for too long. So there was a little bit of like, oh crap, I'm gonna have to just go. Like, I'm just gonna have to go. I happened to have a massage appointment a couple of days later, and I was telling her about it, and she was like, hey, the room right next to me over here is open. Go talk to the landlord. And I had a lease signed by the end of that day.
Of course.
So, and then I went to the hospital and I told him what I was doing. And he was like, I knew you were up to something and I trust you. So, and it's like, just when you get that call, when you get that feeling, I just follow the feeling. I've learned to do that.
And let's go back for our audience who doesn't kind of like know our history together. So we met when you were at a kind of a low point. What was happening in your practice when we met? And then let's just like fill in the gap between then and now.
My gosh, that's a lot of gaps to fill in. Yeah. So I was not in the middle of a Medicare audit, but I was in the middle of the, time in the desert waiting for an appeal hearing, which ultimately ended up taking over 6 years to get that hearing, which by the time I got it, I was already selling my practice and getting ready to move. So there was a lot of stuff that happened with it. And I walked away from that, and I left all that money on the table, and I was like, nope, that's not what I'm supposed to do. So, between the audit and, just getting kind of beat down by Medicare for quite some time. And then I actually was getting ready to go in for a hysterectomy. Like when I called you, that's where I was at. I was like, I'm just barely getting by right here. I'm going to have to take a week off of work, which freaked me out because I'm like, how am I going to take a week off of work? And that's when I was like, I've got to call Barb. So, fast forward I don't know, 5 or 6 years later, then, things were going really, really well. But I also felt like, okay, I'm not really being challenged anymore. So I'm kind of getting bored.
Yes.
So, things had changed a lot. So there was another time that I just kind of woke up and listened to what he said. And he was like, I'm going to move you. I had no idea what that meant, but I was like, okay.
I'm packed.
Which turned into finding a buyer for my practice, which took over 2 years before, from the time that I, advertised it to the time that I had her ready to go and she was ready to take over. So, nothing has happened at a very high rate of speed ever. You just, but I just listened to him and I'm like, okay, I don't know what it is you've got for me, but I'm just going to I'm going to stay the course.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because so often we hear the voice of the Lord, or we start making new plans, and I think it's really easy to act as if all of this stuff is going to happen tomorrow, right? It's like when you find out you're pregnant and you panic, and it's like, you got a little bit of time. Right? Like, there's time to prepare. It's not going to be like right away. It's kind of like what I say about an emergency. And I obviously I get this from my dad, that there are very few emergencies in life, and yet we treat a lot of life like it's an emergency, and it just isn't. Just like, finding someone to buy your practice, and then getting them prepared to carry on your legacy, that's no short order. So I guess my encouragement to those who are watching or who will watch this later, just remember, like, I just had this conversation with my son yesterday. Life is actually really long. Like, I wish somebody had told me in my 20s and my 30s that even when your kids are out of the house, there's a lot of time and potential to make your impact and grow your income. Actually, I remember being at Michigan State University and going out to dinner with my chiropractor when he would come into town for CE stuff, which I had no idea what that meant. Back in the day, he'd ring me up and we would go have dinner together. And I remember standing outside this Italian restaurant as if it was yesterday. And I was telling him, like, I just can't wait to be done with undergrad and then go to law school and then practice law. And I remember him stopping as he was opening the door for me. And he's like, sometimes we can wish away our life and miss a lot. And it was just something that simple of, and the other day when I was thinking about it, I was like, you've been wired for this, since you were, I don't even think I was probably 20 years old yet, of just like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? I got to hurry. And now at this stage of our life, what do you have to say about that? About being in a rush for the next thing? And in some ways that's been good, but in some ways, can you see that that's been a hindrance?
Oh yeah, think of the anxiety that comes along with that. The just wanting things to happen right now, or wanting them to happen exactly the way you thought they were going to happen. I didn't never really think of myself probably as a very anxious person, but as I look back now and now that I've laid it down and I'm like, okay, so I'm just going to do each day as it comes to me. And knowing that I don't have control really of anything other than my reactions. Looking back at the strife that I'm sure that I caused, I know that I caused a lot of that because I wanted it my way and on my timeline. And so I don't know, I guess that's a lot of wisdom. I guess I've gained a lot of wisdom in 20 years.
Yes. I've often said, I wish I had this wisdom back then, but we wouldn't have it. Like, it just doesn't work like that, right? Like experience gives us wisdom. Hopefully, if we're willing to look and learn, right? Um, so starting over at 47 and a half, I got corrected, audience. I just want to let you know. At 47 and a half, not 50 yet. In a new state, in a completely different season of life, what limiting beliefs tried to creep in? And what did you do about it?
Oh boy, you know what? I don't know. I guess this could be counted as a limiting belief, but there were so many times in those first few months, maybe even up through that first year, and I just kept beating myself up, and I was like, "Why did I move? Why? Why did I? I mean, I was coasting, right? My kids were growing, they were out of school, they were doing their thing. I could have coasted through the rest of my life doing the same thing over and over again, been very, very, very comfortable. And I just kept thinking, why did I do that? Why did I move? I had a support system. Everybody knew me. They trusted me. I didn't have to do a thing other than go to work, adjust, and go home, and then do whatever I was going to do. So it's like,
Wait, stop.
why?
It's almost like you had what you had spent 20 years building, right? You just go to work, everything has a rhythm, it's all smooth, there are no surprises. Okay. So
Yeah,
Robin left that comfort. Go ahead.
yeah, I left it because he told me to. And I can't explain it other than that. I don't think I need to, but like I said, he just told me he was moving me. I thought that I have investment advisor licensing. Like I am licensed with the SEC to do investment advising. I was going to go on the road with my husband, who's a truck driver. We were going to see the country. I wasn't going to be in an adjusting room. And like I said, that ended pretty quickly. I could have pushed that. Here's the thing is I could have built a business around that, but I was not an expert in it by any means. This I know how to do,
Yeah.
right? I know how to run this business. I know how to adjust. I know how to take care of people. I know
Yeah.
how to grow things. So I was like, I have to go back to what I know. And so there was a little bit of hurt feelings on that at first, but there's not now.
Yeah.
When I get to see the things that I see and the people that are just rolling in because I know how to do what I know how to do,
Yeah.
it's just so rewarding. What we do is so rewarding.
Well, and I love that that you went back to what you know, what you're good at, and one of the things that you said that you have confidence in, right? Like we talk about in the boot camp, the three-legged stool that Michael Neal uses as an illustration, right? And so in a three-legged stool, for those who don't know on sales, there's one leg that is, do you have genuine goodwill? Like, do you have genuine goodwill towards this person? That's required in successful sales situations. The second leg is, are you confident you can help them? Right? So in the financial services, you are just cutting your teeth. So what successes did you really have to fill in your RAS of saying, oh, I know what I'm talking about for other people? It's one thing to know our money, right? But money is such a psychological experience that then, like, doing that jig and jag, we kind of like know the psychological dance of chiropractic care and healthcare and things like that, but a totally different lane. So you chose to stay in your lane. And then the third one is, do I have a horse in the race? Right. And I would think, and when we do something new, we kind of have a horse in the race of, here, buy this from me, which then tells me I'm doing a good job, where or buy this from me, which affirms that I'm needed and necessary. And I feel like as we go through life and we're in our same career, we already have proof of that. Like we don't need another person in order to feel like, oh yeah, I absolutely have goodwill. I know what I'm doing. And a horse in the race, like whether you say yes or not, I'm still whole and complete on the inside. And I think that's another one of those wisdom things. Do you think, however, that there are people who are in their career 20, 30, 40 years and still don't have that level of confidence?
Um, I do. I do. And I had never thought about this before, but I would generalize and say that there are people that have just been an employee, without having been delegated responsibility, or without moving up the ladder, so to speak, or gaining more responsibility along the way. And I would say also that, I mean, some of those people never want to. Some people just don't want the responsibility. They want to clock in and clock out and take their check home. So um, yeah, I'd say there's a lot of people that live the life and don't really live life.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Well, and I think, it's kind of like that lie that it takes 21 days to develop a new habit. That's not true. Because if I don't take any action, so let's say my new habit is going to the gym, but in 21 days I never go. Well, 21 days goes by. It's not like I'm suddenly like, oh, I'm a gym rat. No, you have to put forth the effort. So it's really about repetition. How many reps have you done? Right? How many times have you wired those together? Right? So now, like Hebb's law, neurons that fire together wire together. Do you have that new neuronal circuitry? So the fact that you had been developing that for so long, right? Like even when you were new in practice, would you still say you had chutzpah, that you still had that confidence?
When I was first new in practice, no.
Oh, no? Okay.
No. I wouldn't say that I did. No, after, it took a couple of years to get that. I guess, I don't know. I guess maybe my perception was what, especially with our profession, is that there's so many, and it's like this and everything, but there's so many people that are going to argue with you about, well, chiropractor doesn't do this, or you're not a real doctor, or I'm not going to trust you, or there's just there's a lot of negative that you have to learn how to combat, which you know it's just what we do as chiropractors. It's not so bad anymore, but it took me a few years of really, really gaining that confidence, because I saw, I started seeing what I was seeing, right? It's like, I don't care what you're saying about what I do and about chiropractic, and if you don't believe in it or whatever your deal is, I know what I see and I know what I'm doing for people. And so, when I started seeing the results of what I was doing, that really, really kicked up.
Nice. So it wasn't necessarily time, it was repetition,
Uh-huh.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really curious thing because I don't ever remember having like low confidence even when I was new in practice. And so I wonder then, like, when it comes to now at 47 and a half or at 56, that's how old I am. The like I'm really in this conversation even starting to see that I think confidence has more to do with not feeling the need to prove anyone wrong and myself right. Right? Like whether someone agrees with me or not, to me, isn't going to change my confidence. Whether they agree with me or not doesn't change the validity of what I'm saying in my mind. Right? And like how do you see confidence? Because I'm often asked, as a coach, like, help me develop my confidence. I'm like, well, or help me get confidence. I'm like, it's not really a get thing. It's
Mm-mm.
it's a knowing. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's confidence and success are completely different things, because, right? I mean, what even is success? But yeah, when you can walk into a room, um, and people start asking, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna mess up some of your questions here. So, I'm in a new town, a new state. I really know nobody here. And the first realization that I really had was, okay, people don't know me. They don't care what I do because they don't know me. They don't have trust in me yet. And so my first step was to gain trust in people. There's a lot of people like, well, what are you even doing here? Why did you move here? What,
Right.
and until I started gaining that trust, they didn't, they, and this is just human nature, I suppose. They didn't care who I was. They didn't care what I did. They don't care that I've delivered 500,000 adjustments in my lifetime. They don't care
Right.
that.
Right.
But when they started knowing me and they started trusting me, then they started asking me questions. Then they started like bringing their problems to me, um, and the only way that I gained their trust was to be repetitive in showing up to small groups, showing up to BNI, showing up and doing my responsibilities, and just doing those things. I mean, just the repetition and the consistency. People started realizing like, oh, this isn't just some fly by the night, she's in, right? And then,
Yes.
they would ask me a question and I would give them this answer that I think probably blew them away. And they're like, oh my gosh, you know what you're talking about. So, um, and then I started leading small groups, and now I'm the president of the BNI because of consistency and doing what I say that I'm going to do, um,
Yes.
or not promising that I'm going to do something and then not fulfilling that. So, to me, I guess just when people start having that trust that I know what I'm talking about, really, really kind of boosts my confidence in what I'm doing, I suppose.
And you bring up such a good point that, it's really easy, in my opinion, to um, hide behind digital marketing, right? It's really easy to hide behind posts and interacting and all of that kind of stuff, but that doesn't develop trust, right? At least mine's not as quickly. There's a lot more that has to be done if you're relying on the digital economy or the digital mediums to develop trust, versus what Robin did was she went out into the oceans and the rivers and the byways where the people were and got to know them. We talk about that a lot, obviously, in the boot camp of getting involved in your community, like showing up so much they can't deny you, and being there to serve and being there to learn and being there to understand, and like you said, consistency, and being your word. Like, if you say you're going to be there, then be there. That's another way that we improve trust. And then before long, people are able to see, like, oh, I like her. Oh, she makes me feel good when I'm around her. And obviously you've heard this a zillion times: conversations lead to connection, connection to relationship, and relationship to commitment. That when we go out and we're with them, then they're not only seeing our words, which is only 7% of our communication, but they're seeing your body language. That's 55%. They're seeing your tone. That's 38%. Their mirror neurons are taking cues from you, and how you carry yourself, and that confidence, and that love, and all of those things. So whether you've been in practice for a long time or you're new to practice, don't forget, you can't catch a fish in a sporting goods store. No matter how good your rod, your reel, and your bait, you've got to go out where the fish are, and in order to catch them. And I love that you went into environments where you already knew you would shine, right? So go into a BNI group. Why? You already know how to talk about business, right? You already know how to do public speaking. You've done it. You've trained for it. Again, like tapping back into those skills and those resources. You're already comfortable in Christian circles, and so small groups with church made sense. And so we don't have to necessarily forge new pathways. We just find those pathways in the new environment that are like the ones that we used to run. So great job. I love your whole story of um, just saddle up. And I've never really even felt like it was like, all right, saddle up and do the grind. You really took on this attitude of adventure and took on this attitude of, instead of obligation, opportunity. Talk us through that. Like, how did you make that? Because it would be easy to be in your shoes and become very bitter and resentful, even though that never leads to a favorable outcome, right? But you chose something different. How did you do that?
Um, a part of it's just the way I'm wired, and I've been wired like that from that way, and because of life events from the time I was very, very young. When life isn't just easy, when you've got a lot of challenges to figure out, it's just kind of the way that I've always approached things. Um, in fact, when I met you and I was kind of in the state that I was at, that was unusual for me. But it was just that little bit of spark that you gave me that I was like, oh yeah, I got to get back to who I am there.
Yes.
But um, that's so interesting. That's such an interesting question and a thought. But because as I watch some of the younger doctors coming out of school and trying to figure out, I read all the comments and the questions and stuff that go on in the boot camp. I don't respond like I used to, uh,
Yeah.
but I do, and I can tell when there's nerves behind it, when there's some anxiety behind it, and um, I guess when you've learned and you've made not mistakes, but when you've learned how not to do something,
Yeah.
and it's not a life or death situation, then you're like, oh, well, I'm going to try something this way. It's either going to work out really great or I'm not going to like it. And then I'm going to change it. There's nothing that we do that is so it's not so life altering that we can't switch course a little bit. Okay, I don't like that form that I started with. I'm going to change it. Okay. I don't know, I don't like the way that I was doing that report of findings. I'm going to tweak it. There's so much opportunity to get things the way you want them. Again, it just doesn't all happen overnight. Even though I've had experience in doing this for a long time, I also had staff doing things for me, right?
Right.
I had people to delegate to. There was stuff that I didn't have to deal with. I didn't do my own billing. I didn't do my own collections. I didn't do a whole lot of things. And now I'm doing all of it. I don't have any
Yeah.
staff at this point. So, knowing the systems that I had in the past that worked, I've had to tweak those so that I'm the one doing all of those things. And it's taken me a little bit of time to perfect those, even though there's still room for work on them, but it flows, and things are rolling so smoothly now that I know that my systems work, right? I know
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
reproducible. I've got the measurements that show that they are. And when you start getting that, then you get to start tweaking the little things. So
Let me ask you this. It's really easy when we have a team to delegate things that maybe aren't necessary. Like if we have somebody else do them, then it's really easy to not care how effective they are or not. But when it lands on our schedule, we start doing some evaluation, like, is this one better than this one? What things, what what's gotten simpler since it's only one person and you only have 168 hours in a week? What did you used to think was so important and it had to be done, and now you're like, actually it just doesn't have to be done?
I would say that the one that just stands out the most right now would be the scheduling. I used to have I had an office manager that was in my practice for a long time. And she was a master at it. She's there's no way I could ever replace her in that. But we were so apprehensive to do any kind of online scheduling because it's going to mess up the flow of the way we wanted our timing to be in there, right?
Okay.
Um, and so she wanted to be on the phone and telling people exactly, detail after detail after detail, and telling them what time to be there, and we have to, allow for this much time for paperwork. And yes, the systems flowed. They were good and they were effective. But when you don't have the chance to be on the phone with somebody all the time to schedule them, because I do a lot of online scheduling. Like, very rarely do I even get to answer the phone.
Yeah,
Which, at first I was like, oh, what are people going to think if I'm not even answering the phone? But it's become the culture in this office that I'm not answering the phone. If I'm with somebody, people understand that and they
right,
appreciate that and they love the online scheduling.
right.
So, I use the Jane software, because it was easy to jump into, it was easy to understand. Are there better ones out there? I don't know, maybe, but it works really well for me. My
Yeah,
message on my phone says, go to my website, hit this button, you can see my availability, blah blah blah. It walks them all through it. As we've been sitting here, I've had 3 people schedule without me even being
right.
without me even being on the phone. The culture in here is known, and then when I get referrals, they just tell the next person. They're like, here's how you do it: you get on the phone or you get on the website. Don't expect her to answer the phone, but the
Yeah,
trust is there that in most of my people are referrals at this point.
yeah,
I've got the social proof from the social media postings and that kind of stuff. They know I'm a real business. They know I'm here. I've got the reviews that it all speaks for itself. And now the referrals just roll in, and it's taking care of itself without me managing it and micromanaging it.
yeah, and that's been pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't really been in this new practice for that long. And when you
Just right at
started,
2 years. Yeah,
yeah,
right at 2 years.
amazing. And I love too that when you started your new practice, I mean, granted, it was kind of like quick, you jumped off the couch in the hospital, was like, okay, I'm gonna sign a lease. Um, and you just went for it. But one of the things that you did was kept your overhead low, right? Like you didn't in that moment need a whole 1,500 square foot office. You know, I individuals who are starting out these days and they get into now, granted, my first practice was, 3,700 square feet, 3,400, something like that. It was gigantic. And by God's grace, I used all that space. But even when I did my build out, I didn't finish part of it because of the overhead, right? I finished what I needed to, which still meant I still had to, like carpet the whole thing or whatever. But it's so important. Like being a savvy business owner also means being profitable. And I think it's really easy to look past that profitability. Like we almost like have this story in our head. I'll deal with that later. Let me just get going. And what my experience has taught me, not only in my own life, but coaching other people, that mentality, that checkbook accounting mentality always leads to overspending. And whether personally or professionally, right? Like, oh, I've got this money, so then personally I'll start spending it. I've got this money, so professionally I'll start spending this. So even as they earn more money, they still have the same amount and feel broke when they, like when they're coming home. So they're managing more and more and more and more and more, and yet not having the fruit of their labor in terms of disposable income or more into investments or whatever that looks like. Let's face it, they're not building their wealth. And like Morgan Housel talks about in the psychology of money, there's a big difference between rich and wealth. Rich is what you show off, wealth is what you protect. And I love that just simplicity of, okay, if wealth is what I protect and not what I show off, what am I really, not what am I worth value wise inside my being, but what do I have on paper that says something? Um, That was totally a tangent I wasn't expecting to go down. So let's talk about this. How did getting involved in your community through BNI shape the momentum of your new practice? And what would you say to someone who feels invisible in their own networking group right now? So let's first talk about how did it help, and what would you say to the person who feels invisible?
So I've never had to do anything like BNI before. I've never had to market myself because I came into a practice that was just rolling, right? I just plugged in, I started taking the overflow, and then I eventually owned it. And that practice had been there for a long time. The reputation was already there. So I mean, here I had to start from scratch. I had to build my own reputation. And so I've never had to do these kinds of things before. And even though, like, when you know me behind the scenes, you know that I'm a different person than when, like, I'm out business wise.
Yeah.
So, like, especially in a community where I know nobody, I'm actually really pretty shy. Once people start to get to know me and I know people, then I will open up and let them get to know me. So it took, here's something that you taught me. I'm going to go off just a little bit on a
Yeah.
tangent. And the reason that I thought that I was shy is because that's what I was told when I was young. When I was small, I heard that all the time. Oh, don't worry about it. She's just shy. So that's what I believed about myself, right? So there was so many things that you taught me in that. And I'm like, I guess I'm really not. Um, I'm protective. I'm protective of myself. I don't just let anybody in. But also, so showing up to BNI in a room of people that don't know me wasn't that big of a deal because we're all there for the same reason, right? Everybody that's in there is like they're building their businesses. We're all there for the same reason, right?
Yeah.
I tried going to some other groups like an all women's group. I didn't fit in there. Okay. So I didn't
Yeah.
go back. I
Yeah.
walked into BNI. We're all business people. We're all trying to grow our businesses. We're there for this. We have a common goal. We have a common reason that we're there. And in BNI specifically, just the structure of it, I really thrived in that because it's a system and it's a proven system. It's been around forever. And if you're in BNI, you know what I'm talking about. But so I thrived in that environment, which made me confident really from day one in there. But again, just the showing up and plugging myself into that system and getting the growth that I got from it was really big. But then it also, like I said, it allowed the other members to see that if I say I'm going to do something, then I'm going to do it. And then, so, after I wasn't even there a year and they asked me to be the president and I agreed to do that, which again, like, dude, I want to be there every single week for 52 weeks, leading the group. Not necessarily. I wanted to have that option to be like, not show up one day, but the accountability of it was huge. The exposure that I've gotten from it has been huge. It's just, I don't know. It sticks you in a place of letting people get to know you. Let people get to know you. You do one-on-ones and BNI so that people get to know you. But there's also, again, another thing that I learned from you: be interested more than you are interesting.
Yes.
I plugged that principle in for a long time. Like, people didn't know hardly a thing about me because I was asking about them. I want to know about you. How do I refer to you?
Yes.
Tell me what's your ideal referral? How do I refer to you? What's the easiest way?
Yes.
You realize that you're in there for that reason. We're there to help each other build. Then it just, again, it gains more confidence. So um even though do I want to get up every single week and go do it? Not a lot of times. There's a week that I'm like, nah, I really want to sit out today, but can't do
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
it's paid off. The
Yeah.
accountability in the system is amazing when you plug yourself into it.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things I want to pick up on here. You know, part of the culture in a business is the lexicon. And so what Robin's talking about here is like I I I learned, and it made a lot of sense to me. So then I shared with my boot camp tribe about labeling and stratifying. Like our brain really doesn't like it that much. And many times, like Robin grew up with an adult determined in their definition, these actions that this little girl is doing, we're going to put the label of shy, right? So then she was told she was shy. So then Robin heard that over and over and over and over and over and over again. It got wired, it got myelinated. And then there's dendritic arborization, right? So think of dendritic arborization like a tree. So then as she got into school herself and she was shy, then this idea of, oh, I'm shy forms a new branch. And before long, we start acting according to that label. And so then, but we always have the opportunity to stop and be like, wait a minute, does that label serve me? Does it serve me to say I'm shy? You know, I remember going through, and you've heard me talk about this, when my kids were little at church, if you were going to be a part of any children's ministry, regardless if you were grandparents, parents, or not, even my parents who'd been involved in church since they were, little themselves, had to go through a thing called Growing Kids God's Way. And it was great. It gave a framework for everyone in our entire church who worked in children's ministry of this is how we do things, right? The interrupt rule. And one of the things that they said that I was really shocked about was being shy can also be a cover up for rebellion. And this really goes to individuals who are raising young kids, and you can be upset by this or just listen for a second. Not you, Robin, but others listening, of if we call our child shy, that gives them a pass to not engage. So then when somebody else says to them, oh, Robin, I love your dress, as a little girl, Robin's already learned she doesn't have to engage with that person because she's shy. Right? So it's really easy to start doing things like that and discounting this little child who really has this amazing opportunity and an ability to step up and engage, and then not hide behind that. Right? We can also hide behind, oh, well, I'm just not good at managing people. I'm just not good at whatever. And for those of you who've been around me very long, you know that I'm going to say, well, you weren't good at wiping your butt and you figured that out. You couldn't talk at one point. You didn't know this was a pisiform. You didn't know how to speak. You didn't know how to do lots of things. But at 56 years old, I can't be like, oh, well, I'm not good at wiping my butt, so I guess somebody else is going to have to do it for me. So I would just encourage any of you who you say that about yourself, I'm not good at it. Well, do you want to be good at it? And what's so good and what will change in your life? And if those benefits, if those big promises are worth it, get good at it. Ask for help. If you want to be better in business and you're not good with it, ask for help. It's not a legitimate excuse, just like being shy isn't an excuse to not step out and be president of the BNI. And like, I think Robin will affirm this. If you're going to be involved in a group and use that as a tool to grow your business, whether it's BNI or the chamber or whatever, you have to step up and be active. No one is going to come around and be like, oh, here, let me make this experience better for you. You step up and just say, hey, I'm here. How can I help? That's how we get involved. That's how being in the chamber or BNI or the JCs or whatever it happens to be, that's how it builds your business. Just having a membership card doesn't change anything. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, no, I mean, I watch it every day, and especially, now that I am the president, and, and I observe those members. Which, let me tell you something. I wasn't shy. I was observant, and I was picking up on energies, which I didn't know that because I thought I was shy, right? But now that I know, what I was really doing was I was observing and picking up on things, whether it was energies, whether it was words or whatever. That serves me hugely now, and I use that in BNI. There are members that don't get referred to, you know.
Mm,
Yes, do they have a great business? I'm sure that they do. But because they're not in anybody at the forefront of anybody's minds, they end up, back in the corner. And they're very hard to approach. And when you do, they're very hard to have a conversation with. And so, some people just continue to try to push, and that's a part of BNI as well, is like pulling out the traits in people and the characteristics that are going to help their business. But if you're just really, really resistant to that, then don't go to BNI. Don't be a member. If you're not going to like the accountability of being there, because there's an attendance policy, like the accountability of that, and recording the business and stuff that you do, then don't do it. You're not going to get the benefit of being there,
right.
right?
Well, and you bring up a really great point, and this is where, like as you know, I've taken a pretty deep dive into neuroscience, and when you understand neuroscience and mirror neurons and the reticular activating system and psychological safety and all those kinds of things, as a business owner in this environment, you would never sit on the sidelines, right? Because you're teaching other people how to respond to you. So if I'm sitting in the background with my arms crossed and I'm showing up because there's this dumb attendance policy, I'm telling other people through my posture how to react towards me, meaning I'm not approachable, right? I'm not participating. I'm just here taking up space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so important to know as a business owner. And I want to go back to something that Robin said. When you go to networking events, everyone is there to give their cards. So be the difference. And I heard Robin say it. When you show up at those, here's the key: show up with this attitude. How will I know if the person I'm talking to is a great candidate for your business? Show up wanting to be interested more than you're interesting. And that just attracts people to you, right? Like like nothing you'll ever do. Like, I could hold a big sign of half off, and that's not going to be as attractive to other people as being interested in what they're doing. And then that also means make sure that you have your elevator speech down. So when they flip the script and they say to you, well, how would I know if the person I'm talking to is a great candidate for your business? And you've got like 2 sentences to give them that are easy for them to remember. So like Robin said, every time you show up and you help out, your elevator speech is coming up in their head. You're going to find a lot more referrals. And that's exactly what Robin's been doing. Very cool. So if another, what surprised you most about building this second act, emotionally, spiritually, and professionally?
um, I I think that the thing that most surprised me is my calmness through all of it. And with all the stuff that was going on in the background, um, just a little bit of background. The reason what I'm talking about is, my husband ended up having an amputation. He had his foot amputated, and so I'm learning to navigate this new life that way. Trying to make life a little easier for both of us in that way. which is something I've never done before either. You know, I've never taken care of an amputee. I'm not a nurse. I didn't,
Well, you've
but
learned enough to be, it seems like, over this experience. That's
right. But you know what? Going through all of those experience, again, you're gaining wisdom, you're gaining confidence that, oh my gosh, if I can change a wound vac and do all of this stuff, then I can show up in my business and be the boss, and people are going to know that, you know, that I know what I'm talking about. It just, you learn just so much stuff when you have life experiences. You don't learn anything sitting on the couch, right? Like, these life experiences have been something I never ever thought I would go through, and I didn't want to go through, but I am. And so, you know, we're doing it. But the just the calmness of all of it. And location is a huge thing. Where I did have my first office, it was ideal for me. The overhead was very low. It worked out well for me, but it was in a part of town that was a little bit hard to get to. Like, you had to know where it was. And that caused me to have to go out and like claw for every new patient that I was getting. Like, I worked so hard for every single one of them. But then I capitalized on them and asked for referrals. And so that was great for me having to do that. But then also in October of this last year, I did move my office again. I am in the center of town right now, you know, because now I know the area better. I know things better, but I am more in the center of town. And when I laid that groundwork like I did for that first year, and then I moved my location, I've barely had a white space in the last 8 months because of the groundwork that was laid. And then and you know, and I say location was a big part of it, but there was a lot of groundwork that had to be laid. And now it just, you know, it's just kind of taken over itself, and I get to plug myself into my own into my own business without doing all these little details. And you know, like, to the point where I'm ready for an associate to come on and start taking the overflow. That's
yeah.
where I'm at there. So in 2 years, that's where I've gotten to. So, you know, just not being afraid of new experiences, not being afraid of what could happen. What am I going to mess up? I'm going to mess something up.
For sure. And you know, that's I think it's Marie Forleo, but I could be wrong. Everything is figure outable. Like, we can recover even in the darkest of days. The truth of the matter is we can recover. Right. So I think that it just makes, and you know, one of the things that I keep hearing as almost a theme is that you've really learned to surrender to change. Of It's gonna change. I'll be okay. Oh, that thing could happen. Surrender. And the sooner in life that we can have that posture, right? Like, I did this with God for a long time. Yes, I want you to take this. No, I really mean it. Like, and then I was like, oh, I just have to do that. Wish I had known that a long time ago. Right? Like, just surrender and being in flow instead of force. And you know, we can start believing that, well, force got me here. It must be the thing that I have to rely on. And of course we can keep doing that, but there's a cost. Where I'm 100% confident we were designed to be in flow. Our pastor just recommended a book to us last week called To Hell with the Hustle. And have you read that book or listened to
No,
it?
but I'm going to.
Yeah, it's really good. And actually I'm talking with Carrie Jack, who is a podcaster. He has the Happy Hustle. it's 0.5% of the global podcasts. That's what his is in that. I have a meeting with him later today. At any rate, in To Hell with the Hustle, he said this yesterday, and I was listening to it. As believers, we are to emulate Christ. Period. Right? We are to emulate Christ. We are to love our neighbor more than ourselves. We are to go to the Father about everything. Like, we are to emulate Christ. Well, let's look at when Jesus was on earth. Was he a hustler? No. He went about the Father's business. He was just methodical. He was calm. He was present. Like, he felt, and obviously he was fully man and fully God. He felt the woman who touched the hem of his robe. He was present. So if we're to emulate Christ, I got to say, the majority of my life, I've been on full bore hustle, right? Like,
Yeah.
if there was a maximum speed, I was pegging it all the time, from sun up to sun down. From the moment my eyes opened, I was ready to rock and roll. And just like, thank you, Jesus, for showing me a different way of just being in flow. And, it's so interesting to me of, maybe I'm not accomplishing as much as I used to. Like, the checklists aren't as long, but man, the degree of fulfillment and satisfaction is like so much greater than all of those years of just hustle and grind. And this is not to say I still don't work hard. I do.
Right.
I still do put in hours. There's just a difference between force and flow. Talk to me like you're shaking your head. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, what's that for you?
What hit me right there was that, yes, this has built, and it's built pretty quickly, but that's not to say that it's been easy,
right?
Because I'm working my tail off.
Right.
I'm 47 and a half and I'm working my tail off because I know where I want to get to. And if I want to get there, I have to work.
Yeah.
I have to get people in the door. I have to take care of people. I have to get them on a treatment plan. I have to sell them. I have to do all the things in order to make this thing grow. I don't have this this perception that, oh, I'm a doctor, I'm just going to start making a bunch of money because I'm a doctor. Okay. We don't get to do that as chiropractors. We're a different breed. Right. Yeah. And so, even though I'm where I thought I was going to be retired, I'm working just as hard now as I did when I was 25. And for anybody to come out of school and think that they're going to get all of these accolades and all of these things just because they're now a doctor is false. You have to put the time in, you have to put the work in. It doesn't mean you have to force it, but you have to work.
Yeah.
There's none of it's going to happen if you think it's going to be handed to you.
Well, and yes, and I want to offer a reframe for you and others that it's really easy. And I personally feel like it's a tool of the devil to, he loves for us to be entrapped. And like, even neuroscientifically, when we're stressed, worried, bored, concerned, or feeling trapped, then we knock our prefrontal cortex offline, right? No logic, no reason, no problem solving, no empathy, and no listening, which that listening to the voice of the Holy Spirit is really important. So of course he wants us to be in amygdala hijack. When we're in amygdala hijack, we're just reacting. And many times when we're acting, we're just 100% in that sin nature, right? And so if what opens up in our life, if we kind of like shake every time we're like, wait, I don't have to. Because at the end of the day, if I have to, then I don't have freedom. And that's what most of us want is freedom. So, and it's not even just like a play on words of like, oh, just change it till I get to. No, the words are only 7% of the thing, right? 93% is really like, what is the belief? And here's what I mean. Like, if instead of I have to, like, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing this. I'm growing my business. I don't have to. Now, I'm not suggesting that if Robin wasn't working hard, that her results would be different. They would, but she doesn't have to do it. Like we have 100% freedom. Like even if
Right.
someone walked into my house right now, I'm watching Ben put our monster truck on the trailer, which I'm really happy his team is out there with him and not me because I'm always like, yeah. At any rate, if someone walked into this house and put a gun to my head and said, Barb, you have to get in the car. Well, that's not true. I don't have to. And it doesn't mean that there wouldn't be consequences for me to face. But the truth of the matter is, I don't have to do it.
Right.
And that's just like anything in our lives. We don't have to do it, and there will be consequences. And so what is it that I'm forcing myself about, that if I surrendered and I just said, hey, like, what would it be like today to just go out and meet people? What would it be like today to be the president of BNI and show up for all that's here? Now, there's still things that you have to, that the decorum has to go through, but there's just so much that opens up. And like, to me, it's the difference between this blind vision versus that panoramic vision of what does life have to show me today?
Mm-hmm.
And God
I like
has
that.
so
I like
much.
that reframe.
Yeah,
I like
like,
that reframe. And it's, especially, even though I have a vision of, okay, I'm going to do this way different than I did the last time. I've got this vision of, okay, I know a broad vision, not a controlled vision,
yeah,
right? Of here's where I want this to go this time. Okay,
yeah,
there I've got a totally different mindset of here's how I'm going to finish out life, basically.
yeah,
What different steps am I going to take to do that?
right. And I'm guessing, you're looking more at sustainability versus just get to the next thing. Is that
Right,
accurate?
100%.
And what do you notice is so different? Like when we first start, right? And this is something I've been writing a lot about, of most of us get started in survival wiring, right? Like we got to get this going. Even though you stepped into an existing practice, if you hadn't done anything, it would not be a legacy practice, right? Like you could take something that was really, really viable and then do nothing and ruin it. And we see businesses like that all of the time, right? Or yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So you chose to take action, and when we all started, most of us started in survival. Like I definitely started in survival. I had 2 little kids, I had 2 student loans. Even though I was in my hometown, I still, I still had relationships to develop, now that I'm a doctor and a business owner versus just like the cheerleader. And so there was still a necessity to get going. And I built that practice 100% on survival, of get to the next thing, like get here, and then, like the in order to, like, rise to this level so you can hire associate 1 and then associate 2. And at one point I had 5 associates, right? And so there was always the next thing to get to, which looks way different than sustainability. What are you noticing in this business versus the other one?
Yeah, so my approach to the working hard right now, working my tail off, is because I know what my next mile marker is. And in order to get to that mile marker, I know what actions I need to take to get to that mile marker, right? And so it's yes, I've got the location, or the destination in mind, but I also have my mile markers um, that work to get to that mile marker. I know changes things, right? I'm ready to bring on my first associate. Um, but it's also like the way that I envision bringing on an associate now is not to bring on somebody to take over on the work. It's for, I want to start training the next generation of chiropractors. I
Mm,
want to start teaching them in a different way than maybe they've seen or experienced, um, which is going to be a ripple effect from there. I'm starting to look at things of what is the ripple effect that I get to have, not only on the person right in front of me, but what kind of effect are they going to have, and then what kind of effect are they going to have. And so it's not a, I'm going to build this business up so that I can step out of it necessarily. It's a I want to build this up in a way that I get to then start teaching more people in a different way. Does that make sense?
yeah, legacy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that, and
Mm-hmm.
that's that sustainability and that legacy piece of I I want to give back, and I want to create. Oh, you know who I missed? Maybe she's still there. Sarah, are you still there? Sarah Perry. I'm currently exercising my right to work class. Life looks a little different, but this is what I want, and I'm happy, and I'm so grateful to be here. I am, here where I am. Hi, Robin. Hi, Sarah. Um, yeah, seasons, right? Like seasons of life, and we don't, obviously, um, Sarah and Billy had no idea Emily was going to be born early and be in the NICU and need extra care and all of those kinds of things and just that, I've watched Sarah go through that season and just surrender. We can fight for sure, and we all learned. Like I feel like we got here through force, and some people make that transition to surrender and flow. Others don't, and I'm not saying one you're a better person or whatever depending on your choice. There's very different outcomes of force versus flow, surrender versus white knuckling life. And then it's pretty cool to see what opens up when we're in flow versus what opens up when we're in force. And both do. Like obviously here in Alaska, we have lots of rivers, and they're rivers that there's so much water, right, that they force the river to change courses and directions. And oftentimes there's a lot of destruction with that versus just flow and it keeps going. That looks way different. Sarah said, I'm still here. Hey, it's so good to see you. It's like the gang is riding again. Oh, geez, we're riding again. How fun is this? Right on. So, so as we wrap this up, if another high capacity woman is watching right now, feeling like her life doesn't match the vision that she had, what would you want her to know about that experience that she's having right now?
If she's having that experience right now, know that there's a reason for it.
Hmm.
Okay, even though it may not make sense, that it may not, like I said, it may not be going the way that you thought it was going to. If um and there are seasons. We just talked about that. There are different seasons, and a lot of them, for a lot of years, that which season is coming, right? It's going to be literally spring, summer, winter, fall, right?
Yeah.
But then there's more to it than that, right? And when he's ready for you to start seeing what's beyond that, then that's when you get to start seeing what's beyond that. And so just knowing that the season that you're in is just that.
He's
And
preparing you.
in whatever it is, there's a reason for it, because a lot of the seasons that I've been in would not have prepared me to be where I'm at right now. And I know that whatever I'm doing right now is preparing me for the next thing that I may have no idea is coming. So be able to
Yes.
pivot, be adaptable, um, you know. Adaptability is a big thing. We know that as chiropractors. If you're adaptable, then you survive. If you're not,
Right.
you're fine.
That's so true, right? Like you gotta be able to adapt and improvise and just know, like we make plans and God laughs. Like those are cute. Like how about this? And to always remember like there's nothing that we want more than to see our children succeed and be happy. Right? And to be right where God wants them. Like, we want that so much for them. Um, and just I always consider, like, how much more does my heavenly Father want for me than I even want for my kids, right? And it's sometimes hard to grasp because we love our children so much, but multiply that by infinity, and that's how much love the Father has for us. And I think sometimes it's easy um, to doubt and to question and to be like, "Are you sure you got the right zip code?" Like, for this girl, that's what you want me to go through? And yet, like, the more that we grow in Him and we can just rest in His palm, right? And rest in knowing He wants good for us. He works things together for good and I can say this with anyone but especially with Robin. We're both big Trump supporters and like how chaotic everyone got when Trump took decisive action. And then now, oh, well, I guess that was a pretty good thing, right? So suspend judgment and just let things play out. And you may see a different outcome, not just obviously politically, but in our lives. And I think of going through life now almost like doing a 360, like looking around, like, look at all this cool stuff God's got going on here, versus, wait a minute, I only wanted that thing. Like, why isn't that thing happening? And he's like, you have no idea what I'm preparing you for. Like, it's so much more than your silly little mind could come up. So as we wrap this up, which was supposed to be a 20-minute conversation, and now we're an hour and 11 minutes. Um, what final words do you want to offer to our audience?
Oh, how do you wrap up an hour and 11 minutes in final words? um, I'm gonna go back to my old trusty that I learned when I first started coaching with you, and that is, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to get a coach.
Mm,
Okay. Even though I've been doing a lot of different things, I've done this for a long time. Um, I still, I'm still listening to what Dr. Barb says, even though I'm
aw,
not as vocal, in that kind of stuff like I used to be. Um, don't think you have it all figured out. And if there's somebody that's a few steps ahead of you, then pick their brain about it, read their book, right?
yes, this
Learn
is
from
a
their
really good
experiences.
one.
Learn from their experiences. We don't always have to figure everything out from scratch. I know it makes it hard on ourselves when we do try to figure it out from scratch, but the stuff that I've learned from my coach is the reason why. And not just Barb. I mean, I've had a lot of mentors and coaches throughout the years, but all of this stuff, they say basically the same thing in maybe a little
Yeah,
different way. And you're
absolutely.
gonna and you're gonna resonate with one way and more than another, and that's great. But when it comes down to it, we're not doing anything new.
Yeah,
Okay, listen to the people that have gone before you. um, yes, like Sarah says, you're never alone. Yeah, have a tribe, have communities. You're going to have multiple different communities, and the reason we've got to have that as humans, right? We want to be part of a community.
yep,
Just and lean on that. There are going to be times when they lean on you, and you're going to lean on them, and that's what we're here for. It's what humans do. That's just
yep.
we're all just don't try to go at this thing alone.
That's so true. I last week, a couple different masterminds that I led, I brought this up, and Dr. Jerry Prevo, who was our pastor at our former church, and just the most recent president at Liberty University. I remember him talking about Satan loves to isolate. He loves for us to feel like we're alone. And Pastor Prevo was talking about, if you think of a block wall, it's all of these cinder blocks held together with cement, basically. And so it's strong. Like, run a truck into it. It's going to stand. Like, maybe a few of them will break, but it's going to stand. Well, take that one cinder block and just set it right there by itself. A kid could knock it over, right? And that's who we are when we choose to go it alone. We're one cinder block, and we don't really have a whole lot of strength, but together, I think of Red Rovers and Robin right over, and we're locked arms, right? Well, locking arms, like, you can't hardly break through. But when we're by ourselves, that's how we get picked off. Or look at the animal kingdom. The wolves are on the outside of the herd, watching for the one that gets that's a little bit slower, right? And they'll isolate that one off, and then it's party over. Even a bigger animal, a moose against one wolf is always going to win, but a moose against a pack of wolves never wins. So it's the same thing in our lives, is we have to be in community. So find your tribe and love them hard. Robin Ellsworth sent that to me, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And it's still hanging in my office. Yeah, find your tribe and love them hard. So Robin, and to all of you who have participated today, thank you. This was a really fun conversation, and I'll be doing these more and more. So if you enjoyed the conversation, or if you're watching and you'd like to join me on one of these conversations, they're kind of like podcasts, only different. I'd love to have the discussion with you, and for you to share your story with others. So Robin, thank you so much. I love and appreciate you. Thanks for being in my tribe, and for being a really great friend.
Same to you.
All right. See ya. Bye, everyone. Have a great day. God bless you.